Chapter 14. That night, Jenna's dream took on a strange new dimension. She still struggled with the tangled vines, still fought like a crazed tiger to keep from being sucked deeper into the forest. But this time, just as she had begun to gnaw through one of the vines with her teeth, she felt someone's hand, strong, competent hands, on her shoulders. When she turned around, she found herself staring right into the face of Amy Ruggiero. She was so startled, she almost forgot that the vines were still dragging her where she didn't want to go. Then Amy cupped her hand around Jenna's elbow, and as she did, the vines fell away from Jenna's legs and waist. Now she really was moving forward. Amy was guiding her right toward the ghost tree, and Jenna wasn't doing anything to stop her. She might have gone all the way into the forest if a loud thump on the roof hadn't awakened her. Sitting up in bed, head cocked, ears poised, trying to identify the sound, Jenna waited. She thought she heard a light scuffing sound, but she couldn't be certain. It was still pouring outside. She wondered if the sudden thud had been a broken branch landing on the roof, the scuffing sound only a squirrel or a raccoon. She scrunched down between the sheets, staring up at the ceiling as if she expected whatever was up there to come crashing through the plaster at any moment. But when the sound did not come again, she fell right back into her dream. The mist was so thick the next morning that for a moment Jenna thought she was still trapped in the dream. She stood on the deck holding a mug of hot tea and squinted into the fog. Tiny beads of moisture clung to the fine hairs on her arms. At least it had stopped raining, although there was still no sign of sunlight. It didn't matter, though. Andrea would still want to go to the pool. Jenna sat down on the top step and leaned against the railing. She could not stop thinking about Amy Ruggiero, and she really had tried. Amy was not the type of person you thought about for any length of time, or so she believed. But Amy's sudden appearance in Jenna's dream disturbed her. She wondered what her friends would say if they knew about Amy's letter. Probably make a big joke about it. She hated to admit it, but the whole time Amy was being so kind to her in the restroom that night, Jenna had been silently praying that no one she knew would come through the door. Thinking about that now, she felt a deep shame, not just for herself, but for the way things were. It was all part of the code. No one would even dare change the rules. If they so much as tried, they'd find themselves on the outside, alone, like Amy Ruggiero, and that was the last place Jenna wanted to be right now. She took a sip of tea, and then she looked over the rim of the mug. She thought she saw someone standing at the end of her yard, near the path that led into the woods, but as she squinted into the mist, the shadowy form darted deeper into the bush. She was trying to convince herself that she was seeing things, that her stupid dreams were finally getting to her. Then a voice said, "Who is that, I wonder?" Jenna looked up to find her mother leaning against the door jamb, eating an orange. She was already dressed for work, although Jenna suspected it wasn't even 7 o'clock yet. Her mother had seen the person too. Jenna shook her head. "I don't know." Her mother stepped out on the deck and leaned against the railing. It looked like a boy, didn't it? A teenager. Jenna thought about this for a minute. The person appeared to be wearing cutoffs and a t-shirt and had short dark hair, but that didn't necessarily mean it was a boy. In fact, with that description, it could be Andrea, although Jenna knew it wasn't. "I'm not sure," she said finally. Her mother went back into the kitchen and returned with a mug of steaming coffee. She ran her hand over the cushion on the lounge chair. Finding it damp, she chose to lean against the railing again. "Maybe I shouldn't tell you this," she said, picking her words carefully. I wouldn't want you to worry, but something strange is going on around here." Jenna frowned. "Around here? Around our house?" Meredith Ward took a deep breath and set her coffee mug on the railing. "Come on. You have to see this for yourself." Jenna followed her mother upstairs to Jenna's bedroom and watched as she opened one of the windows that overlooked the front porch. Then Meredith slid the screen up. With only one knee poised on the sill, she stopped. She seemed unable to move. Jenna stared at her mother. "Are you okay?" Meredith shook her head. "Sorry. I can't seem to bring myself to go out there. The roof. It's okay, Mom. Just tell me then." Her mother backed her way over to Jenna's bed and sat down. "Go look at the gutters." Jenna peered out the window. "Okay, I'm looking. Now what?" "Well, what do you think?" "About what?" "They're clean, for heaven's sake. Someone cleaned out the gutters. They've been clogged for weeks. We had a regular waterfall gushing off the roof the other day." Jenna wondered when someone could have gotten on the roof without either her or her mother hearing anything. But then neither of them was home much during the day. That was probably when it had happened. Maybe it was Mr. Krebs. "I don't think so. He's a little too old to be climbing ladders and cleaning gutters." Jenna thought of the sounds that had awakened her the night before and told her mother. Meredith merely nodded. "I heard something too." "You think this person did it last night?" Her mother shrugged. "It certainly looks that way." Jenna felt a tingling along her spine. Maybe it seemed like a nice thing to do, but why did this person have to go sneaking around at night? Her mother began to pull at a loose thread on a hem of her skirt. "There's something else." Jenna sat down in her desk chair. She wasn't at all sure she wanted to hear more. "Someone's been weeding the flower beds." This is just too weird. Jenna glanced over at the window as if she expected to catch the culprit still out on the roof. Disturbing is more like it. Her mother was trying to break the loose thread she'd been working at, but it only grew longer. "I don't care how thoughtful this person thinks he or she is being. The truth is, it makes me feel vulnerable, especially after what happened to Charlie." Jenna tried to shake off her own growing uneasiness. It was bad enough that a bullet could suddenly drop from the sky and change her whole life. Now she had to worry about strangers sneaking around her house at night. Wasn't there any place left she could feel safe? "I suppose I should notify the police," her mother said, crossing the room and picking up her shoes. "Let them know we have a prowler or trespasser or whatever around here." She gave one last tug at the loose thread that had been annoying her. "Oh, now look what I've done." The hem of Meredith's skirt was sagging in the front. She glanced at her watch. "Thank goodness I still have time to change." She slipped her shoes back on and headed out the door, leaving Jenna to wonder about the latest unsettling turn of events. Judd Pesarello's party was all anyone talked about at the pool during the third week of August. With school looming only 2 weeks away, everyone suspected this would be the last big party of the summer. Groups of friends would still get together at each other's houses. The parties would not cease completely, but the truly awesome parties, the memories of which sustained them through the school year, were coming to an end. "My parents are best friends with the Passarellos. Judd and I practically grew up together," Andrea said one afternoon while they were at the mall buying school clothes. She had been trying all afternoon to convince Jenna to go to the party with her, but Jenna was skeptical. "Then how come I never hear you talk about him?" They had stopped at the cosmetics department of Macy's, and Andrea was brushing a light coat of blush on her hand to test the color. "Well, it's not like I hang out with him or his friends or anything." "That's my point." Jenna still wasn't sure she could handle parties yet, and she was looking for any excuse she could find. "What?" Andrea looked indignant. "We still know each other. Our families are friends. He's not going to turn us away at the front door, if that's what you're worried about." She held out the hand with the blush on it. "What do you think? Too much rose?" "There won't be anyone there we know," Jenna argued. "It'll be mostly juniors and seniors." Then she added, "Too much rose." Andrea wiped the blush from her hand and tried another color. "Sure there will. Everybody's heard about this party. You think nobody's going to try to crash it?" She shook her head. "I bet half the school shows up." They wandered over to the display perfumes. Andrea sniffed one bottle without spraying. Smell." Jenna lifted the bottle to her nose, then sprayed a small amount on her wrist. "Half the school, including Michael McKenzie," she smiled over at Andrea. Andrea pretended to be reading labels on the other bottles. Then she said matter-of-factly, "I heard he and Darcy Kelly broke up." She picked up another bottle, sprayed the perfume into the air, and then stepped under the mist. "I just want to meet him, Jen. Is that so bad?" A familiar uneasiness settled along Jenna's spine. as it did whenever Michael's name came up these days, although she had never mentioned this to Andrea. She told herself that the apprehension came from watching Michael, and she was now convinced that it was Michael. Sit on the church steps across from her house almost every evening. His behavior was a little weird, maybe, but that didn't seem to be reason enough to alarm Andrea. Jenna also knew how much it meant to Andrea to be at the same party as Michael. She was right. It was a chance to meet him, maybe even talk to him. So far, Andrea hadn't been very successful at the pool. Well, Andrea was leaning toward her, staring her right in the face. "Hello," she called. "You still in there?" Jenna knew that Andrea could just as easily go to the party with any of their other friends, but she was counting on Jenna for moral support. That was what best friends were for, to help each other over the rough spots. Jenna let out an exaggerated sigh. "I know you. You won't give up until I say I'll go." Andrea nodded agreeably. "Doesn't that make it easier?" As they turned away from the perfume counter, Jenna spotted Amy Ruggiero over by the Clinique display, trying on lipsticks. Amy smiled and waved. Jenna returned the wave, suddenly remembering Amy's letter. She wondered if Amy had expected her to write back. "Isn't that Amy Ruggiero?" Andrea asked, looking curious. "Yes. You know her?" Andrea's eyes widened. "Not very well," Jenna said, but she thought perhaps she was beginning to.